Hey there everyone, this is the Vintage Sewing Machine Garage, and I am making another video of trying to get caught up on my videos. Been restoring machines. If you haven't seen my other videos, I restore vintage home sewing machines, and I have certain ones that are favorites of mine to restore, and you're looking at one of those. When people ask me which machines I'm willing to work on, it can vary amongst different brands, but the most important thing has to do with the year. Because every brand has a certain year when they made what I consider their last great machine, and great meaning heirloom quality, all metal construction, so, a machine that can literally sew for generations of people. And you are looking at one of the last ones. I've done a video of this machine before, and I don't even know if it's still up on YouTube. I have to check. But I think it is. I've got to change the main image on that video. But this is the Kenmore 158.1941 model, and as such, it is a Kenmore sewing machine, and of course Sears offered many models. I'm going to take it out of its little tray because it comes with a carrying case. I have the original carrying case, which is great. But this machine is interesting for several reasons. It was basically the last, I call it the last of the Mohicans in my other video. It's one of the very last all-metal home sewing machines ever made, period. And the reason, it says made in Japan. They were made by the Japanese. At the time it was made, Sears still had a very high quality specification for their products. And eventually they would change that, and they would keep pressuring the manufacturers to cheapen the product, and eventually all of the companies went to plastic gears. But long after all the other manufacturers had started using plastic on the inside, okay, you have to be careful with 1970s and 80s machines because sometimes they still had metal bodies, but the inside was plastic. Not true of this machine. This machine was produced around 1975. 1976, there was one more model after this one, and it was the last. And after that, they were like all the others. But one of the great things about this machine is that in addition to being all metal, as all my other machines are, what you just saw me do is I took off the access panel, and I'm going to push a little button, and of course it converts. These are sometimes called convertible sewing machines because it converts from a flatbed to a free arm. Now, most people, if they have newer machines, many of the new sewing machines are free arms. It's not always easy to find a free arm vintage sewing machine. There are mostly European brands, the Pfaffs and the Berninas, that had this. But this machine is one of the only all-steel vintage sewing machines that has a free arm. Many of you do not use free arms, but some of you might. Why might you use a free arm? One of the reasons you might do it, this is a piece of denim I'm going to sew on in a minute. Maybe you do lots of hemming or cuff work. Maybe you sew baby clothes or small things with very small collars where you need to get it wrapped around. You can sew any of that stuff on a flatbed. Okay, I use a flatbed. I don't even use a free arm myself. But if you're looking for what your options are in vintage sewing machines, this is one of the very few that is all metal and is a free arm. You access your bobbin here. It takes class 15 bobbins, which are Singer. Singer invented that class. In fact, it's very similar to a Singer bobbin case. And this machine has quite a few features in it. And that's not a surprise. From a 1930s machine, which had just so many features, by the 1970s, you're getting all kinds of things going on. This machine has lots of built-in stitches. And you're going to see me moving from, there's like one set of stitches, and this little knob here points to a red dot. It's a little hard for you guys to see. I'll try my best to get the camera. I have to get the camera beside me so to do the actual demonstration. And then it will do, of course, straight and zigzag. It'll do blind stitch. It'll do a lot of the stitches you think of, like many new machines have today that use computers. But then if I switch this little knob over to the right, which I'll do in a little bit, I'm going to be able to do what are called reverse or stretch stitches. They became very popular in the 1970s because people were wearing lots of knit fabrics, lots of polyester knits. And when you sew knits, there are ways to sew knits without this feature. I've sewn knits on my old Singer straight stitcher. But if you want to make that, if you sew a lot of knits, you want to make it a little easier, you can do this with reverse stitching. or stretch stitches. And I'm going to demonstrate a couple of them. I've been doing some testing to make sure the machine was ready for sale. And I'm going to go in here, and you can see, I'll go ahead and hold this up. I haven't done this yet, but these are the stitches that I created on this machine. And you'll see this one here, which really, it's called a pine leaf. I'm going to demonstrate that for you guys in just a second. But I wanted to go ahead and start with just some basic, straight stitches. Okay, guys, what I did was I had this piece of fabric I was holding up to you before, and that's where I was testing on the machine, getting it ready. But I wanted to get you a new sort of a open piece of fabric. I want you to see the stitches, and it would be hard to kind of, I got a lot going on in that little piece of fabric over there. So let's get a kind of a clean slate. We'll start with straight stitches. This fabric, by the way, you've seen me use it in some of the other videos. This is sort of a medium to heavy, I'd call this a maybe a slip cover weight, drapery weight fabric. And then I'm going to adjust my presser bar, increase the pressure a little bit there. And so what I'm doing now, and I'm just starting out real slow, is I've got a straight stitch, and this should be the longest setting on that stitch. And sure enough, it is. Always checking the other side to check my tension, make sure that my stitch tension is working well. Come over here. And of course I can go even faster with this machine. Being a 1970s machine, I'm going to get a lot more RPMs than I would otherwise. So let's come back over, and I'm going to shorten the stitch length a bit and then increase the revs. So as you can see, it can really go. And then of course I can back tack. Oops. Let's get the needle down and pull my fabric around. Okay. What I want to do now is I want to come over, and then I'm going to show you guys Zigzag, which is very easy. The controls on these machines are really simple. So, they don't have computers where you push buttons, but they also don't have software malfunctions. And they're not hard to alter. And for many of you, you're not going to change your settings all that often. But when you need to, they're easy to do. So I'm going to pull my needle up, got my presser foot down, and I'm going to come over to this top dial, which is my stitch width, and I'm going to come all the way over to 4, which is the widest. And I'm going to come back over to a long stitch, because that'll make it easy to see. Oh, I forgot. I have a setting that's this is actually a blind stitch. But it's kind of a cool thing to see. Blind stitch is very useful, particularly for those of you who do lots of hemming or alterations in clothing. Nice to have. You don't have to have it, but it's certainly a nice feature. And I'll pull this up in a minute. You guys can see the stitch. Let me come over to what will be normal zigzagging. Got my thread tail caught there. Okay, so I'm going to turn around. When I come back, I'm going to come back and do a shorter zigzag so you guys can see what I call it satin stitch. It's not a true satin stitch. Let's get it even more narrow. But it kind of does, actually it is a satin stitch now that I say that. I've gotten it short enough that it is a satin stitch. Has a very embroidery look to it. It is sort of a form of embroidery, if you think about it. And it's beautiful and consistent. And again, we'll go underneath and see what we have here. But the next thing I want to do for you guys is I want to show you one of the features that you start to see in the 70s, really important, and that is the stretch stitches. So you'll look at the settings that I've got right here. I'm simply going to flip this switch over to the white dot, and then I go to my knobs, and all this is color coordinated, so you don't have to study it that much. And I'm going to come over. I think I showed you guys the pine leaf stitch before, which almost looks like a serger stitch, really cool. That's one of those. I think this time I'll do the smocking stitch, which is a really amazing stitch, and to me it is anyway. And the fact that a vintage machine can do this without a computer is just wonderful. You don't have to worry about your software having issues. So make sure I get this set properly. Now, guys, if you notice the machine, look at the fabric and the way it's feeding. It's moving forward, but it's also moving back a little bit, right? It hops back, and that's where you get the built-in stretch stitching that a lot of people were just. There was a revival of sewing in the 1970s, and there were all these knits out there, and a lot of people didn't know how to use their old machines for knits, although you can, and so they built in these beautiful stretch stitches. I mean, this thing is amazing. Let's do, let's see how much time I have. Okay, I'm going to do another decorative stitch for you. Okay, guys, this is the other stretch stitch I've set up for you, and this is I believe this is a multi-point overcast stitching. It almost looks like a blind stitch, but not really. But I'm going to show it to you. It's beautiful. And the fact that, again, the machine just loves creating these stretch stitches. You know, honestly, for many of you, you may never even use this feature, but it is here for you if you need it. And it really, for those of you who may have, really wanted a new machine because it has all these different decorative stitches, even though most people don't use them, I think you would be quite pleased to know that you can do it with a vintage machine. So let's take a look. See what we've got here. Okay, first you're going to see the straight stitches that I made along the top. Then you'll see that blind stitch. Down here you'll see this is the zigzag, and then the very tight satin stitch, which is basically a short zigzag. And then look at this smocking stitch and how cool it looks. Here you'll see this really neat overcast stitching, and then I change the length and we get this really neat, just incredible level of control for a machine that can actually do reverse stitches. So again, this machine was sort of the last of the great all-metal machines, and it's one of the few free arms that I offer because I don't see many free arms in the vintage sewing world, and this is one of them. So when I get a chance to restore one, I always try to. If you have questions, just send me an email. You can set up a time to bring your own fabrics, or you can use some of mine, and we'll give it a test run and see what you think. Thank you.